Having looked at the gross anatomy of bone, let's look at the microanatomy of bone. This microanatomy will also be covered on the first lab practical as well. So this is kind of like a dual, must know it here, must know it there type deal. If we are looking at bone in a cross section and we are looking under a microscope, because we are talking about microanatomy, then we would see a series of rings, just like rings of a tree. These rings themselves are called lamella. Those are the plates of the bone that we can add as necessary to make a bone thicker. In the center of all this, we have a artery, vein, and nerve. And by the way, throughout the body, arteries, veins, and nerves typically run as a unit. And then what we would see are these cavities, and inside these cavities are the osteocytes, the bone cells. The cavities themselves are called lacunae. And notice that all of the lacunae are connected because in the shaft of the bone, this is going to be very dense right here. This is going to be calcium phosphate. It's compact bone, and so nutrients cannot travel through compact bone. So to enable those nutrients to supply the osteocytes inside the lacunae, we have a series of canals. They are called canaliculi, which I don't know why, but to me sounds like a porno, right? Canaliculi. Whatever. These canals supply the osteocytes with nutrients and carry the waste away. Now I used osteocytes. Osteocytes means a bone cell, osteo, bone, cytes, cell. But it turns out that there are different types of osteocytes. The first two actually kind of go together. Osteoprogenitor cells can turn into osteoblasts, which are the next type. They are found throughout the periosteum and endosteum. So that's that tissue on the diaphyseal walls and the lining of the marrow cavities. And so these are, think of it like a reserve of the next type, which are the osteoblasts. Osteoblasts make bone, and they are always working. Blast make bone, so think of it as blast or builders. And that is in direct contrast to the third type of bone cell, the osteoclast. They break down bone. So blast are builders, clast are crushers. Now, unlike the osteoblasts, which are steady going, the clast can either be stimulated to break down bone faster or inhibited to prevent their breaking down bone. Now, breaking down bone may seem like a strange concept to some of you, but in actuality, bone is not a static tissue. It's not like you make a skeleton and then it's formed and you pretty much don't touch it throughout your adulthood. As a matter of fact, bone can be very dynamic. It can be you can break down up to 25% of bone in any given day. How about that? 25% of your bone? That's crazy, huh? I mean, in 4 days you wouldn't have any left, except for the fact that these osteoblasts at the same time are building bone. So bone, think of a big house, and on one end of the house you've got people tearing it down, and on the other end you have people building the house, and the next day they switch. It sounds kind of crazy, but that's essentially what's going on here with your bone. Bone is very dynamic. It is actively being created and actively being destroyed at the same time. So why would we do this? Well, it has to do with the fact that muscle contraction requires calcium. And there are specific calcium channels in our heart tissue that are also extremely important to our well-being. And so your brain is kind of making command decisions about this kind of a thing. And what your brain has decided is it's not going to be any good at all if your heart quits beating and you have strong bones, because then you're just a dead person with strong bones, right? So if a sacrifice has to be made, it's going to be made by weakening the bone to keep the heart pumping. Your brain then thereby assuming that you're going to do something to redress this calcium deficiency by drinking your milk. So hormones are released to either turn these osteoclasts on when necessary or shut them down if it's not necessary. So if you're being good little boys and girls and you are drinking your milk and that is now fortified with vitamin D for you, then you will release calcitonin. And calcitonin will depress the osteoclast activity and basically stop you from tearing down bone because it's not a desired goal. It's not like you want to tear down bone. So as long as you are getting sufficient calcium, you're not going to tear down bone. And the osteoblast will keep working and you will take this calcium out of the blood and you will deposit it into the bone. On the other hand, if you are not being very good and you are not getting the calcium that you need, well, then your brain says, I'm sorry, bone, but we're going to have to take this out to keep the heart going. So you will release parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone stimulates osteoclast activity. So it tells the osteoclast, let's get going, rip that bone up. We need this to keep the muscle happy. It's also noteworthy that calcitonin is sometimes prescribed. If you have a patient that their bones are weakening and that kind of thing, and you want to prevent that from happening, you can prescribe calcitonin, and that will stop osteoclast from ripping up bone. However, if you do this, that does not change the fact that the muscles still need it. So you also better make sure that they're getting calcium and vitamin D. And the ironic thing here is if they've been getting calcium and vitamin D in sufficient quantities already, you wouldn't have to put them on calcitonin. But therein is the deal.